Welcome to Smoke Signals. I'm Matt Montgomery along with head football coach and athletic director Wayne Coleman. Today's show is sponsored by All Smiles Dentistry. Coach, kicking off the 2021 season here, and let's kind of roll back a little bit and talk about spring and how did that go? I know you put some new things in and changed a few things. Talk a little bit about how that went.
We did. We focused very heavily on our run game, not just on offense, but on defense as well. Got to get better at stopping the run this year. We've got a lot of kids coming back in the front, so we feel good about that. And we made some personnel moves in the backfield, and we feel real good about our run game on the offensive side. Yeah,
this could be potentially, since this is your 7th year in Jacksonville, could be a team that has the best running game. Well, I mean, the Cam High years were pretty good. This has a chance to compete with that.
It does. These guys are very athletic in the backfield, and we've got a bigger offensive line than we've been having. We've got some experience coming back on the offensive line. So that combination of athleticism and size up front, we're real excited about.
Of course, last week you had your one and only scrimmage at Bullard. Not very long, about 45 minutes. Talk a little bit about what you think your team got accomplished.
For some of them, it was their first time to actually play in varsity competition. And it's kind of funny when I look back on the scrimmage, immediately after the scrimmage or even in the middle of the scrimmage, I'm going, oh, that kid didn't make that play because he's never made it in a varsity contest. Or look at there, that kid made that play in his first varsity contest. And then there's the mixture of, hey, he made a play, ooh, he made a bad play. So it kind of goes back and forth, but the experience is stuff that you've got to grind through, and we're going to make mistakes with our young kids early in the season. We've got to be ready by district.
And that is really what these non-district games are for, is to get some of those young kids. They've never played on Friday nights, and there's quite a difference in speed between junior varsity and varsity, of course. As far as the scheme of things, I was talking with your offensive coordinator, Josh Moore, and he was talking about how pleasant it is that the kids are used to second year, he said, with him. And they're getting it down. They're starting to understand the lingo and starting to put things together better than it was last year for them.
Yeah, when you install a new offensive system, you've got your basics that you teach, whether it's wing tee or air raid or whatever it is. But there's those staples that every offense has, and in the first year of doing it, you're constantly having to coach the most simple, basic plays, the concepts. Now, going into year 2, we don't have to spend time as much on those things, and we can get more advanced in some other areas.
Of course, Jacksonville will be opening with Crandall in Crandall Friday night, and of course, you have the 3 non-district games that you had last year with Palestine and Henderson, finishing that out, and you get the bye week. Let's talk about the district. Once again, Texas High looks like they're one of the teams to beat.
Yeah, they're loaded. They've got a lot of great talent up there, and Jerry does a great job coaching those kids. And a lot of people leave out the part of coaching that has to deal with the psychology of counseling and coaching kids and building relationships. And yeah, there's a lot to X's and O's and strategy and that stuff, but there's also a lot, especially in East Texas, into what kind of relationship can you build with those kids so that you trust each other and get those kids to come to practice every day. And Jerry does a great job with that in Texarkana.
So 8 teams, really Texas High is probably 1A, and I would say maybe Marshall's pretty good right there, but other than that, Coach, this district should be a lot more balanced than in the past.
Yeah, I think there'll be some teams that have been in the bottom half who are going to make a move up and contend for the top half of the district. There's a new coach in Hallsville, so they're rebuilding a little bit. Pine Tree lost a bunch of seniors, so they're going to have a little bit of a rebuild going on, but they've got a great system in place. And then, of course, Marshall's going to try to bounce back. They're not happy with the way their season went last year, so I'm sure they've had a great offseason.
Coach, looking at this game against Crandall, this is a team last year, pretty close game at Tomato Bowl, a 13-point win by Crandall, and I looked at the stats, and it's interesting how this works, but you had 4 turnovers, they had 2, so you were -2 in takeaways. You lost by 13 points, 2 scores. And that isn't usually the way it goes. So I know that was one of the focuses I know that you had in the spring and coming into camp here in the fall.
Yeah, and it's no coincidence. Actually, early in that game, they were driving the field on us going down to score, and they turned the ball over and then we flipped the field on them and scored a touchdown. So early in the game, we took advantage of their turnovers to jump up by 2 touchdowns. But then as the game wore on, we turned the ball over 2 more times than them, and they ended up with 2 more touchdowns than us. So it's a big key in that game.
You talked at the top of the show about, you know, personnel and moving some people around, and let's talk about some of that. I mean, you have a junior quarterback in Ryan McCown to be his had varsity action last year, some late as a sophomore. You moved Isaiah Mallard to running back. He's going to be the lead dog at running back, but you also have some other weapons with him in the backfield, and then your receiving core should also be pretty strong.
Yeah, we've got, we feel real good about Ryan coming in. He'll be starting his first varsity game this week, and then, of course, Mallard to be basically starting his first varsity game as a running back. So both of them looked really good in the spring. And then we've got some kids that are coming back at receiver. Devin obviously is a Division I talent at receiver, and we've got other kids that we're rotating in at receiver right now. So we've got just enough depth right now that we don't have to start any of our skilled kids both ways. But we're really kind of thin there and one injury away from one of those guys having to pop up and play a lot of plays on both sides.
And you had the big tight end move in, Boyd, and then you had you made a change with Aiden Gay, the 3-year starter, will now go to the defensive side of the ball primarily.
Yeah, and Aiden is going to really help us out on the defensive front. We haven't had Aiden's about 280, and we haven't had a kid like that on the defensive line in several years. And then Boyd is going to be, I think, is going to be a real playmaker at defensive end. Darian
Hinton at linebacker, that was a nice re-addition. He was here, left a year, and came back, and he's a senior, and he ought to be a force at linebacker.
He is. We're going to play him at inside backer, and he can really run, and he's a big hitter too.
Coach Crandall, the Crandall Pirates, you went and saw them last week in Lindale. How'd they look?
They've got a lot of skilled kids on offense. They're no different than last year. They are loaded, and they're going to try to outscore people. They've got a couple of super athletic kids on defense that run around, and they remind us a lot of some of our kids on defense. The two schools are very similar, it looks like, athletically.
Is the quarterback a left-hander?
The kicker's a left-hander. The quarterback is a left-hander also, that's right.
Yeah, I thought so. I watched some of the video, and he can sling it. And he's got Samuel Osamigo. He's a highly recruited wide receiver that had a big game at Tomato Bowl as a sophomore. I know he's a guy you got to stop.
He is, and we are, you've got to have a plan because they'll take him and put him on one side of the field and throw deep balls, and he'll win contested passes. And then on the other side of the field, they'll put smaller, quicker guys that they'll throw wide receiver screens to. And so you've got to be able to shut down both sides of the field. Puts a lot of stress on the defense.
So you open on the road. What's better, Coach, opening on the road with a younger team or playing at home with a younger team?
Wow. I'll tell you Friday night at 11.
We'll decide then.
Yeah.
I just would think sometimes when you're playing at home, there's so many distractions because everybody's there. But when you're on the road, it's kind of like it's all, you kind of cling together. But then again, when you're on the road, not as many friendly faces.
It's funny how the adults, or at least the coaching staff, is all worried about, did we cover onside kick, did we cover hands team, did we cover all these situations? The kids are worried about, when are we putting the decals on the helmet? Are we getting to have a pregame meal Friday? What time
it's all about perspective. And
we're all concentrating on different things.
Yeah, it's all about perspective. So talk about what did you see in Lindale that Crandall does well offensively?
Yeah, they are surprisingly, as talented as they are at the outside wide receiver spot, they've got 2 really good running backs. So they're not afraid to try to pound the ball. And I think that's part of their game to help them play better defense also, is to ball control on the offensive side and try to keep the ball away from you. They will play up-tempo. Yeah. They'll play really fast, and that's where depth becomes an issue on the defensive side for us.
Defensively, and watching, of course, when you're watching some of these scrimmages on huddle, you don't get the whole package like you saw when you were physically there, but defensively, they look like they had some guys that would bring the hat.
They do. They've got an outside backer that usually plays to the field that's real athletic. He was number 5 in the scrimmage. He's probably number 6 from last year, but he can run around and fly and hit people. They've got an inside backer that's just as, he reminds me of Darian Hinton. Yeah. He can run and hit people. And so they're not, they're not, as much as I worry about their offense, they've got players on defense.
Yeah. Coach, let's talk about the keys to the game for your team to open up with a win.
You know, just looking back at our scrimmage last week and looking back at last year's game, we've got to take care of the football. There's, I don't know, I guess it's Bobby Knight that said more games are lost than won. And let's not give games away with turnovers. Let's take care of the football and make the other team make plays, make the other team drive, 70, 80 yards to score. So that's the biggest key. The other thing I think is just not getting big-eyed with the kids that haven't played in that Friday night game. Keep it simple as a coaching staff so that our kids can execute and not be thinking about, now what do I do on this coverage, what do I do on this route? We got to make sure we keep it simple enough so our kids can play fast.
Yeah, interesting you say that. I saw a great quote this week that said, football is really a simple game. It's the execution that's hard.
Yeah.
So that pretty much describes what you're saying.
No, there's no doubt. Yeah. And there's so many things that have to be executed correctly that it's hard to get them all covered in practice. And we spent 15 minutes yesterday on fielding punts inside our 10-yard line. And I think last year they downed 2 balls on the 1-yard line on us. So we can't let that happen. The kicking game's going to be big. They've got a great kicker. Ranked by some people as the #1 kicker in the country. Wow. So he's going to be big, and we've got to hold our own in the kicking game.
Well, it's Jacksonville versus Crandall, and the season opener will be on the air at 6:45 on JHS-sports.com, or you can go to our YouTube channel, and we'll be streaming the ball game. For head coach Wayne Coleman, I'm Matt Montgomery. We'll see you next time right here on Smoke Signals.